Good morning. Thank you all for coming out. Last night, a group of about 90 protesters marched through downtown Tucson in solidarity with the Stop Cop City movement in Atlanta, Georgia.
Tucson. The group who did that is
During the march,
now.
windows of at least 2 downtown banks were smashed. The bank, a Wells Fargo, and the PNC here behind us are both linked to projects currently destroying forests in favor of more cops, more oil, and a certain march towards climate apocalypse. A Wells Fargo executive sits on the board of the Atlanta Police Foundation, the organization behind the Cop City Movement project. PNC is a funder of the Mountain Valley Pipeline, an oil infrastructure project currently threatening Appalachian communities. We know that we'll be hearing in the media from the banks and the police, but we wanted to make sure this morning we got the community's outlook on what happened last night. So first off, we have Reverend Tracy Howe of United Church of Christ.
From the point of conception, Cop City was never just a local Atlanta issue. Since the racial justice uprisings of 2020, funding for police has only increased, and right alongside it, the killing of civilians by police. So crying out against any construction of Cop City in Atlanta is a cry for all of us everywhere, if we care about life and freedom. Cop City is directly connected to the militarization of police across the country and rising repression everywhere. The Militarized Police Training Center in Atlanta will include a mock city to train police in urban warfare, a bomb testing facility, a landing pad for a Black Hawk helicopter, and staged scenarios in which the U.S. civilian population is the imagined foe. It would be a training ground available to other law enforcement groups in other cities, in other countries. The movement to stop Cop City is a movement to end violence that is killing our communities and destroying our world. Cop City was never just a local Atlanta issue. The history of this country is inscribed on the land. The theft, the murder, and displacement of indigenous people, onto chattel slavery and plantation economies, to the forced labor of incarcerated people on prison farms, to redlining and organized abandonment. Continuing this legacy of theft and death, this proposal was brought forth and this troubled land chosen, now the blackest part of Atlanta. The movement to stop Cop City is a movement to change legacies of death and end violent systems that are killing our communities and destroying our world. Cop City was never just a local Atlanta issue. The proposal to raise the Weelaunee Forest, the lungs of Atlanta, one of the largest cities in this country, is part of continuing environmental degradation impacting all of us who breathe air. We already live on a damaged planet. We are already living in climate catastrophe, and this madness must end. The Weelaunee Forest and those that defend the forest call us to action concerning the air, water, and land under threat here in Arizona from Oak Flat to the Santa Rita Mountains. The movement to stop Cop City is a movement to end planetary violence that is killing our communities and destroying our world. When community members and forest defenders began occupying Weelaunee, they were met with oppression and raids, and Tortuguita, Manuel Paez Terán, was shot at least 14 times, found with 57 bullet wounds. As people rise up and refuse extractive land profiteering across the country and world, from the Mountain Valley Pipeline to efforts to save Oak Flat from Resolution Copper Mine just 2 hours north of here, the murder of Tortuguita demonstrates the stakes for any of us who dare to say no. Meanwhile, this violence, this extraction, is killing our communities and destroying our world. To be clear, community leaders and organizers in Atlanta have been fighting to stop Cop City for years, using every democratic channel available, only to see so-called democratic systems fail time and time again, most recently as efforts to bring a vote to the people through a referendum have been thwarted because the mayor and city council will not create a system to see it on the ballot. In addition to this, we have seen unprecedented repression, beginning with charging protesters and forest defenders with domestic terrorism and targeting a community bail fund. From there, the outcry of people across all levels of government condemning these tactics, repression has only continued to rise. Targeted arrests were made at a music festival last spring, and this summer, the Georgia Attorney General's office brought RICO charges to 61 people, listing mutual aid, solidarity, and collectivity as the grounds for conspiracy and racketeering. The movement to stop Cop City concerns anyone who believes in solidarity, acting in truth that we are dependent on one another, in caring for one another, and building a world without police repression. Finally, in our globalized economy, we are all deeply entangled in these things. Just as our tax dollars are funding a genocide in Gaza and weapons for that genocide are being designed here in Tucson, corporations based in Arizona with offices here in Tucson are funding Cop City and other projects that are killing our communities and destroying our world. Despite this, there are still good people doing good work, demonstrating and living solidarity and care. We need all people of faith and conscience, those who love and build community with knowledge that we are interconnected across cultures and geographies, to join the movement to stop Cop City and projects born out of the same logics, moving us towards increased repression and ecological destruction. Nearly a year ago, my Christian denomination released a letter regarding the Stop Cop City movement and the horrible repression being witnessed. We are a denomination of 4,800 congregations with a number of churches in the Atlanta area who are part of a tradition that provided a faith home for many of those who founded our nation and who led acts of civil disobedience. We are deeply concerned that these charges appear unrelated to public safety and strongly related to suppressing the right to dissent and protest. Beyond the lack of legal justification, these charges run counter to broadly shared values for people of faith and conscience. We cannot passively witness the law being manipulated and contorted for unjust and immoral political purposes. We therefore stand in opposition to such abuses of power as we stand for justice and the right to peacefully protest. Since this letter was written, domestic terrorism charges were escalated into a RICO indictment. Since the RICO indictment, legislation criminalizing bail funds and increasing charges against those publicly protesting have been passed in the state of Georgia. Since the proposal for Cop City in Atlanta, construction plans and proposals for similar training facilities have been uncovered across the country. The struggle to stop Cop City is the struggle to liberate our imaginations, our economies, the stories and relationships we live and practice from fear and violence. It is an invitation to solidarity and mutual aid and collectivity and care. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Tracy. Next we have Sam Bloom, Executive Director of Splinter Collective.
Hey y'all, I'm Sam Bloom. Today we're here to address the critical issue that affects not only our community, but also the entire planet. We stand against the development of Cop City as it represents expansion of law enforcement power, militarization, and surveillance that will have detrimental effect on our community's well-being and safety. As you know, Black people in our nation, and of course, we're also standing always on the front lines when it comes needs to cease to exist. Our main goal is to raise awareness about the negative impact of Cop City and to call for a more community-centered, people-first approach to public safety. We believe that investing in proactive measures such as education, social services, mental health support, and community building are essential for creating a safe and more equitable community. We're not even going to mention the fact that housing first is going to make a lot of the problems that we have with so-called crime be abolished, because people need to be housed, they need to be fed, and we know that these are human rights. We reject the idea that increased police presence equates to enhanced safety. Again, we know that more police, the more Black and brown people are going to be harmed. It's just what the data shows. We're proud to stand together with various community organizations, activists, and concerned individuals who share our belief in a better, more compassionate approach to public safety. Today, we invite community members, elected officials, and decision makers to join us in taking a stand against Cop City. We encourage everyone to reach out to their city council members, attend community forums, and voice their concerns about this earth-killing project. Because if we're not going to stand up now, we're going to be quelched from standing up in the future. Let's just do it now.
Thank you, Sam. Next up, we have Hava Shapiro of Tucson Anti-Repression Crew.
Good morning. I am a member of the Tucson Anti-Repression Committee, or TARC, a community organization founded in 2019 in response to the arrest of 12 people who were arrested during a protest and falsely accused of rioting. Their charges were ultimately dismissed because protesting isn't a crime. TARC is a part of a long-standing tradition of political and social movements providing mutual aid, movement-aligned legal support, education, and community care to those who face state repression. Our collective is made up of non-attorney legal workers, attorneys, law students, and people who have been directly impacted by state repression as defendants or their loved ones. TARC's work falls squarely within First Amendment protections, and while we know the police and prosecutors love to trample the constitutional rights of protesters in this city, TARC won't stop supporting protesters in the invocation of their rights to silence to law enforcement, counsel, due process, and other rights as guaranteed by the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments. The movement to stop Cop City has been brutally targeted by Georgia law enforcement, who have gone so far as to mass arrest people at a music festival and charge them under state domestic terrorism statutes. Accused community organizers running a bail fund of participating in a, quote, criminal organization along with 58 others. That's the 61 in total RICO defendants. And they even murdered, as we mentioned previously, forest defender Manuel Tortuguita Esteban Perez Taran on January 18th, 2023. We cannot say his name enough, and we will all say it together in this place. TARC has collaborated with organizations, collectives, and movement participants from across the country and the world to show our solidarity to those facing state repression in Atlanta, Georgia. But we know the repression stretches much further than Atlanta. The FBI and ATF participated in the raids of Atlanta activists' homes just 2 weeks ago in a desperate and sad act of intimidation and harassment. Last night, here in Tucson, at least 7 people were arrested when a protest occurred downtown. 3 people were detained, cited, and released in the middle of the night. 4 are appearing in court as we speak here in this place, and we have not yet heard their charges. Tucson Anti-Repression Committee members and volunteers have spent the last 12 or more hours trying to find those who were kidnapped by the police. When people showed up outside of the TPD headquarters on Stone Avenue, just a few blocks south of here, to hold a vigil until protesters were safely returned to their community, TPD alerted us to a, quote, ongoing investigation about the folding table we brought to put snacks and water onto. After walking over to speak with the sergeant on duty to inquire about the location of a person taken into custody, whose name and date of birth we provided, we were aggressively told to leave and then surrounded by 3 squad cars and questioned. I cannot help but wonder, what are you afraid of, TPD? People providing care and mutual aid to others? Folding tables? Boxes of chips? Or is it that the movement that was ignited by the murder of George Floyd in May 2020 is powerful? It is resilient and continues on in the struggle to end police terror. State repression at both the local and federal level is designed to make people feel afraid to act and use their voice. We saw last night the movement to stop Cop City will not be terrorized by the state nor paralyzed with fear. This resilient, powerful, and inspiring movement is inextricably connected to the struggles that the people of Tucson are engaged in against the deadly Pima County Jail, against the border wall and the criminalization of migration, the ongoing violence against and displacement of indigenous people, and the vile war economy that Raytheon enslaves this city to. Tucson Anti-Repression Committee stands behind all those who face state repression and violence for any reason, but in particular, our mission is for those who are being repressed as a result of their efforts to build the world to come. A world without police violence and without cop cities. No cop cities in Atlanta, no cop cities in Tucson, no cop cities anywhere.
Thank you, Hava. Last speaking, we have Sam Beard, who's joining us here today as an environmental advocate and Stop Cop City organizer.
Last night, environmental and abolitionist activists took bold action in solidarity with the movement to defend the Atlanta forest and stop Cop City, this time in Tucson, Arizona. Today is the final day of the nationwide summit to stop Cop City, a multi-day convergence that saw educational and cultural events in support of the movement to stop Cop City and the larger social justice ecosystem. For 3 years, a movement has been building and experimenting with increasingly refined and pointed tactics in support of the righteous cause to challenge white supremacist police power and the ecocidal corporations that it protects. What occurred last night was the first time a mass militant action in support of the struggle to stop Cop City has taken place outside of the city limits of Atlanta and represents a paradigmatic shift in the tactical disposition towards stopping the ultra-controversial project. The brick-and-mortar branches of corporate financial conglomerates, PNC Bank and Wells Fargo, had their windows smashed out and movement slogans spray-painted upon their walls. Tortuguita's name was left emblazoned on the bricks of big banks that are directly complicit in their assassination at the hands of the Georgia State Patrol in January of 2023, and fueling the climate crisis that Tortuguita was dedicated to resisting. Wells Fargo sits on the board of the Atlanta Police Foundation and the shadowy entity ramming the construction of Cop City through. PNC Bank is a major funder of the Mountain Valley Pipeline and seeks to profit from the furtherance of climate catastrophe. From day one, frontline communities in the struggle to stop Cop City have maintained this is not a local struggle. The corporate backers of the Atlanta Police Foundation do not restrict the scope of their business operations to any specific geography. Neither do the revolutionary freedom fighters countering them every step of the way. From day one, Atlanta Forest Defenders have strategically targeted the businesses tasked with physically constructing the project, as well as those financiers shoveling millions into supporting Cop City. Activists seem to have made it strikingly clear that if you are materially supporting the project, you will be materially targeted. As I speak, there is a demonstration wrapping up outside of the Nationwide subsidiary's headquarters in Scottsdale. There have been demonstrations at Nationwide brokers across the United States. To the executive team at Nationwide Insurance, we are calling on you to cancel your contract associated with the construction of Cop City. Environmental activists have long since targeted big banks for their shameless profiteering at the destruction of planet Earth and the annihilation of the conditions for life itself. And the banks targeted last night appear to be no exception. We are calling on PNC to stop funding fossil fuel infrastructure and the Mountain Valley Pipeline. We are calling on Wells Fargo to sever all ties with the Atlanta Police Foundation. The police may have cut down the trees in the Weelaunee, but they have made one grave error in their calculation. There are more of us than there are of them. We will not back down, and Cop City will never be built.
Thank you, Sam. We won't be taking any questions this morning, but we do have the written statements available.